Okay, the last rubric or last instruction task is about analyzing your own teaching. 2 prompts. What changes would you make to your instruction for the whole class and or for students who need greater support or challenge? Uh, Again, always think that whole class is okay. It'll get you a 3. If you can break it down into focusing on specific students with specific needs, that's even better. The second part is, why do you think these changes would improve student learning? Support your or justify your answers with research and theory. So the things to do: use data to make your decisions. Break down how many students were responding, how many students were getting it, how fast progress was made during the instruction. You have video of it, so take the time to count hands, to look at actual data and so on. And say, based on what I was seeing, students were not engaged. I could have pushed this a little faster. They could have used another example here or whatever. When you're talking about that, be specific. Call out at this time. When Timmy said, I could have done blah, blah, blah because theories and feedback say ... right? I think that focusing on missed opportunities for feedback, whether either a student had a misconception that you kind of missed when you look at the tape, so to speak, that you could go back and look at, that's a really good thing to talk about. Any examples that you gave that students really didn't get, or attempts to clarify that you made that really didn't work, those are opportunities. How well different student groups worked, or how you arranged it, right? Who you matched with who, or how big the groups were. Think about how fast you pushed, where you started. Was it too challenging at first and you have to take a step back? Or was it too easy and you had to kind of fast forward through a bunch of stuff? So consider your goals and everything. You will have based all of this stuff on prior academic learning, right? You will have justified this in the planning sequence. But then again, you could be wrong. So this is the opportunity to talk about some of that stuff. Whenever you, or whatever you talk about or point out, suggest changes that make sense in terms of theories, right? Easy ones, the low-hanging fruit in this case, scaffolding, how much structure you gave, how much support you gave, how well you identified additional language demands. Great things to talk about. Whole Vygotsky body of theories there. Optimal challenges. Again, this is kind of like the zone of proximal development, but it's also a whole another set of literature and research. Just Google optimal challenges or research on optimal challenges, and you'll get some theorists about that. The idea about situational interest. There's a lot of interest theories out there. Situational interest, if you Google that, you'll probably get a bunch of stuff about how you kind of catch interest and how you hold interest and how you develop that into personal interests. Those are great theories. And any other content-specific stuff that you're looking at. There probably are, if you're teaching students how to write persuasively, there probably are some theories specifically about persuasive writing, specifically about group work, specifically about how you use students of varying levels of ability to complement each other rather than to hinder each other. Make sure you explain the theories and principles here. Don't just say, because of differentiation, blah, blah, blah. Explain what differentiation is, how it applies, and why it would make you think that your proposed changes would actually work. Again, don't just say, Vygotsky says and constructivism indicates. Explain what it is. Again, you only have 6 pages of single-space stuff here. So you might have to choose your options very carefully. But if we look at the rubric, and here we're looking at rubric 10, it's the 5th rubric in the instruction. Level 3 is that your proposed changes address the students' collective learning needs related to the central focus, right? So you're looking at, as a whole, how did the class do? How much were they engaged? How much progress did you make? What could I do to make it better? You make some very sketchy superficial connections to research and theory. Easy to do. Level 4. Now you're starting to talk about individuals and groups of students, and you are making stronger connections to research and theory. Level 5 again, everything you say is couched in theory. You're using a concrete theoretical framework to suggest everything that you're going to be doing. If we look at level 1, right, your changes have nothing to do with what went on. And if we look at level 2, right, there's a superficial relationship, but doesn't really get at what is relevant for the central focus. When you consider things like, I've mentioned, pacing, directions, and things like that, if you tie it into the central focus, make sure that you're talking about how their understanding of the strategy or those related skills went. Don't just talk about, in general, I was talking too fast. Talk about it in terms of, I didn't allow ample opportunities for practice for this particular strategy, or I failed to identify the essential part of this strategy as it relates to my central focus. So make sure that everything you do, and throughout, of course, is always related back to what it is you're actually teaching. Other than that, there's not really a lot to it. When we meet next time, we'll look at some video samples. I'll ask if there are any questions about these rubrics, and we can kind of take it from there, watch some other people do some teaching, and use these rubrics to evaluate how we think they did, where there were opportunities for improvement, and so on.